Hey gang, Joyce with Skip and Cass Farms. We're getting ready to set up the Invitec fogger. The Invitec fogger is Italian made. It was a whole lot less expensive than the other one. I forget which one it was. There are obvious reasons as to why. The other one wasn't a steel, but it was another similar German-styled engineered fogger. But it was like almost half again as much. And for someone like myself who is not going to be spraying all the time, it just wasn't worth the money. I will say the finish and polish on the plastic stuff is not quite as good as you might expect. So this is a little challenging sometimes to get threaded. You know how sometimes with like a screw, if a thread's been damaged or it doesn't quite line up perfect, you have to wiggle it and work with it a little bit. And so the biggest challenge is some of the plastic components are just not as robust as you might expect. So for somebody like myself who is a retired woman, I don't have the physical hand strength and temperament that I'm just going to try and force something. I'm going to try and finagle something before I force it. So I figured that's probably going to be less of an issue for someone like myself than somebody who's used to going in and, as the old-fashioned phrase says, manhandling things. One of the things that kind of bothers me a little bit about some of the YouTubes is they all kind of start at a certain level. Well, if you're like me and you're a gal, or you grew up in the city and you don't know anything about mechanics and you've had to learn everything on your own, and it usually came at a cost the first or second lesson, I try to assume that you know nothing. And for those of you who think this is too simple and too basic, well, you're right. It probably is for most of you. But for the one or two that might see this and appreciate it, those people are the people like me, and that's why I'm doing these videos. It's not because of any other reason other than to try and share my journey and where I am, and try to share as much information with as many people as possible so that they don't make the same silly mistakes. So anytime, this is a two-stroke engine, which means you've got to add the oil to the fuel. There's no separate oil reservoir. That's true with a lot of small things like chainsaws and weed eaters, gas-powered weed eaters. The older, small outboard motors. So you always mix the oil in with the gas. And when you're bringing the gas can over, you always kind of want to slosh it around a little bit. If you do ever buy any steel components, you know, like a weed eater or chainsaws like I've done, when you make that initial purchase on a new piece of equipment, if you also buy a 6-pack or a 12-pack of their 50-to-1 oil treatment, it'll double the warranty on your appliance or your equipment. And I actually had that save me on my weed eater. So I'll share that with you. And they honored it. They actually replaced the motor on my weed eater. And it would have been outside the normal warranty, but because I got the steel 50-to-1 oil, you just mix it per gallon or per gallon. The little bottles come in a 1 gallon, 2 gallon, or 2.5 gallon size. So whatever meets your needs. And then I always run my engines dry, whether it's my chainsaw, my weed eater, or this Invitec. So I always have to refill it with fuel. You want to do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, oh, I forgot. This one's got that spring in it. Number one, it keeps you from having to pay for repairs. I only use real gas, non-ethanol gas, for all of my small engines. Ethanol is hygroscopic, which means it absorbs water, kind of like diesel does, if you're familiar with that. And it's very difficult on small engines that have the little tiny plastic tubes. I'll just use this as an example. The ethanol gas is difficult or hard on that plastic tubing. So just avoid it. Just get real gas. Use the 50-to-1. Just buy a small amount of gas at a time. And for me, I never fill it up. I just put in about the amount of fuel that I think I'm going to use for the amount of product that I've got. And then that way you don't have to either pour the fuel back out or forget about it and leave it in there. And then the next thing you know, when you go back to try and use it again, it won't start. And it could be one of the needles in the carburetor that's stuck or whatever. But your inconvenience of not having equipment working when you want to is a whole lot bigger than the inconvenience of filling it up an extra time. I just use that as an extra water break. So this just kind of hooks up right there real easy. That's kind of nice the way that fits. Let me show you now, if I can, without changing the setup over here with the tripod. I just did it with a piece of tape. There's a number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Those change the size of the aperture coming out here, so the amount of product coming out. Generally speaking, you always want to use number 1. Now, I do make an exception for that for my own personal use. I have a small garden. When I'm going to be doing a drench into the soil, I want a little bit more volume going out a little bit quicker. So I may use a 3 or a 4 instead of just the 1. But for any foliar spray, it's going to be recommended that you go with a number 1. And the number 1 is always going to be pointing to the inlet side, not the outlet side. So it's always going to be pointing back to where the liquid's coming from. Put this back here. And get that hooked back from over here. So the engine on this is a little bit like most small engines. You've got to choke it first. With all the steels and with this one, when you set the engine on choke, you only want to pull the cord 2 times. Don't keep pulling it. Just pull it twice. Then you move it halfway back to basically kind of an idle speed, and you start it from there. If you keep pulling on the choke, it'll cause the carburetor to flood, and then it won't start at all. There are videos online with this piece of equipment kind of talking about that, but those are general principles that are probably going to apply, gang, for whatever kind of 2-stroke piece of equipment that you've got. One of the things I like about the Fogger is I can do foliar spray, I can do soil drenches, I'm not buying 2 or 3 pieces of equipment. I'm not buying a pressurized backpack or with using the fogger. Now I don't have to use a sprayer so I'm not dragging around 200 300 feet of hose, which I did with a hand sprayer, and that was not a lot of fun. So that's one of the reasons why I went to this. The other thing that you want to do, and I'll just show you now before I do it. Whoops, come on. It's on there real tight, so I'm going to have to move this to get this out of my way before I can open that up. Let me put you on hold, and we'll get you taken care of. Hey gang, I thought I'd like to never get that lid off. I also, if you'll notice, I moved this cart a little closer so I could put the wand on that, because I don't like to have it sitting down where it's on the gravel, because it'll blow onto the gravel and it chews up the plastic at the end of the nozzle. Also, another thing that you might want to check, there is the trigger mechanism on mine, and if you'll notice, the lever is down and the little orange button is all the way up. I can't tell you, it's been more than once that I've tried to start it, and the reason it didn't start was because that little orange lever was still in the off position. So the spark plug wasn't getting any power. On this particular brand, there is a hose to the handle, to the lid. You don't want to remove that because it's hooked down here to another thing on the side of the tank, and it would be a pain to fix. One of the nice things is it's got a secondary filter, which is right here. It's got a secondary filter. I don't know if you can see that screen. Yeah, you can see that screen. To filter out any sediment or anything that might create a challenge for the tubing going in. And again, down here, this is a shutoff valve for the water flow from the tank. Always have it horizontal across the tube, just like on a gate valve, because if you leave that open and then fill this, it's just going to run right out and down the nozzle. Ask me how I know how to do that, how that happens. Yeah. So, if you're looking for perfection, if you're looking for super professional, really high gloss entertainment, this is probably the last time you'll watch my channel. If you're looking for something that's a little real and a little more amusing and full of lots of truth and information, then you might want to come back again. So, let me move this gas can real quick. I don't like to leave them sitting in the sun, especially if I'm fixing to go do some work. Okay, so on this particular unit, the carburetor is right down here and right behind these hoses is the bulb for getting gas to the carburetor. I'm sorry for putting my back to you. And then, but filling it, we'll go ahead and fill it next. I sometimes make a mess, even though I try not to. Sometimes it's a little easier if I raise the bucket up just a little bit higher It gives me a little bit smaller stream down at the other end, so I don't have water running all over the tank and getting on the, potentially on the air filter or another part of the engine. And just take a few minutes, few moments, and there you go. Now, as you can, I don't know if you can see, but that fills it up. 10 quarts is 2.5 gallons. Well, Joyce, you're going to be changing that all the time. Why don't you fill it all the way? Well, water weighs about 8 pounds per gallon. You can see what I'm saying about not having quite the finish. Probably what I should do next time is just get a little bit of carnauba wax, like a car polish wax, and put it on the inside of this lid and put it on the outside of the threads. And then that'll slide on and off a whole lot easier. So I usually leave it this way because I don't want to pull the cord and then go, oh man, I forgot to turn it on. So I usually leave it on. And then to start it on this one, the choke is here. So you want to pull it a couple of times with the choke. And then move it back up to halfway. Now on mine, it's kind of particular. It really likes a certain spot halfway. Let's see if I can find it this time. Oh, goodness gracious. Part of that is because I ran it dry and I didn't give it the full, you know what? That's what I didn't do. I didn't give it the full 10 pumps on the carburetor before I started all of that. So let's give this another try. Let's start over.